I don't want to spend a lot of time on this Liberty Safe issue, but I want to specifically identify something that I'm quite familiar with dealing with subpoenas. Specifically, the question I want to address here is whether or not I think Liberty Safe's response, that's right, the response to this controversy about turning over information to the FBI, whether or not their response is adequate as a matter of law with respect to their new supposed subpoena policy. Let's talk about it when we get back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Box of Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and author of First They Came for the Gun Owners, the discussion of how the anti-gunners intend to take away all of our rights when it comes to the Second Amendment and maybe even beyond. And First They Came for the Gun Owners, check it out if you have not already done so. All right, folks. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the Liberty Safe issue because there's a lot of other people covering it, and my tendency is only to cover things that I feel I can add extra value on. Obviously, the Liberty Safe thing was handled, in my view, wrongly by Liberty Safe. They never should have voluntarily turned over anything to the federal government at all without being forced to do so under the law, meaning pursuant to a subpoena or something along those lines. They should never voluntarily do this. And this goes not just for Liberty Safe, but for any and all businesses. You really don't want to be voluntarily doing anything with respect to law enforcement, especially if it involves people's information or other people other than yourself, because among other things, you don't want to necessarily risk getting sued by third parties if you disclose information that they come back and say you should not have disclosed, and they are damaged thereby. So you want to be very careful with this as a general matter, turning over information about other people, especially those people such as your customers or clients, because you may owe special duties to them. Again, it's all very specific, fact specific. I'm not giving you legal advice here, but conceptually, you always want to be careful doing this. Now, with that background said, we all know the basic facts of this case, which is that Liberty Safe apparently sold a safe to an individual who was ultimately arrested. The guy's home was subject to a search warrant by the FBI. They were searching the home. They came across a locked safe. This locked safe was a Liberty Safe made by the company Liberty Safe. And when the FBI could not get into this locked safe, they reached out apparently to Liberty Safe and says, can you give us the codes to this safe? And Liberty Safe allegedly did exactly that. They turned over the codes. Once they found out this was a search warrant, apparently that's what they say, and once they said there was a search warrant, they turned over the codes to the locked safe. They should not have done this, in my view. I think it's bad on a whole lot of levels. But the bottom line is that's what they did. There was a big outcry about this at a whole lot of levels. I'm sure you've seen other YouTube channels and you've read about this in the papers. Fox News has covered this. The New York Post has covered this. Everyone seems to be covering the story. So there was a response, and this is what I want to talk about. The response from Liberty Safe was as follows. They said, we have a new commitment to customer choice. And it's called Liberty Safe's Commitment to Customer Choice. It goes on for about 3 pages. I only want to read one paragraph about this because this is something that I think a lot of people don't appreciate and understand because, of course, why would they be familiar with the details of subpoenas if you're not an expert trial lawyer, if you will? So here's what they wrote. They say, quote, we have also revised our policies around cooperation with law enforcement. Going forward, we will require a subpoena that legally compels Liberty Safe to supply access codes, but can only do so if these codes still exist in our system, period, close quote. Now, this is an improvement because now they're now saying they will require a subpoena that requires them to turn over documents or information. But this is not adequate, in my view. And let me tell you what the policy should say, in my view. And it's not just this. A subpoena is not enough. The way it should work is this. The policy of Liberty Safe, and frankly, in my view, generally all businesses, should be as follows. If a subpoena is necessary before you do anything with respect to third-party information, customer information, but it may not be sufficient. What I mean by that is, yes, you need to have a subpoena compelling you to turn over information. This is how I see it, before you even consider doing that. But then the best course of action, as a general matter, is you should reach out. Meaning, if you get the subpoena, Liberty Safe, as I see it, should have a policy that says we're going to reach out to the customer. So again, the safe company gets the subpoena. They then contact the customer and they say, look, we've got the subpoena. We're not going to respond to this for 5 days or 6 days. not including, of course, holidays and weekends, which we're not going to count, but we're going to give you, the customer, some number of days, some amount of time to go to court if you want and try to stop the subpoena. In other words, we're going to, the safe company, as I see it, should reach out to the customer and say to the customer, look, we got the subpoena. If you don't care about us responding, if you're okay with us giving this information out for some reason, that's fine. We can do it, and no harm, no foul. But if the customer says, no, don't do that, I want to call my lawyer, we may want to go to court and move to quash or to otherwise suppress the subpoena because we think we have a property interest in this, a privacy interest in this, and we don't think whoever served the subpoena, whether it be law enforcement or otherwise, whether or not we don't think that they have a basis for getting that information. So the right answer here is not the current proposed policy here that says we will require subpoena. It should also be we will require subpoena and we intend to give any customer subpoenaed or any customer whose information is subpoenaed against us, we intend to contact the customer if we can get a hold of them and speak to them and give them a period of time to go to court or otherwise communicate with law enforcement and see if they can work it out without us, the safe company, getting involved here. Because if you think about it, what's really happening here is you have some information that the government wants and that arguably the private citizen doesn't want the government to have. And now you're putting a company like Liberty Safe or whoever the company is, whatever the business is, in the middle of this potential dispute over this information between, again, the private citizen on the one hand and the government on the other hand. And again, it doesn't have to be the government. It could be another third party because private parties in private litigation can serve subpoenas too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be law enforcement. So the other policy I might make to this Liberty Safe thing is if we get any kind of a request for this information from law enforcement or anyone, this is what we intend to do. A, there has to be a subpoena. Then we get the subpoena. Then we're going to contact the customer. Then we contact the customer, give them time to respond and object. And, again, if the customer doesn't object or they don't get the court order in the time period allotted, well, then we're going to turn over the information. But at least everyone knows ahead of time that's how it should go. So, no, I don't think, in my opinion, the current policy articulated by Liberty Safe in what I just read to you in this video is adequate. I think it's a good start, but it doesn't get them where they need to be. And I think if they do the sort of thing that I've just articulated, that will be a lot better. And by the way, this discussion I've just had here is not just specific to Liberty Safe. It also should be specific to all the other safe companies, any other businesses, anybody else that holds customer or other client information. What I'm talking about applies all over the place. And again, for those of you who are really in a situation where this could come up, you should talk with your own lawyer about your own policies, because some industries like the healthcare industry with HIPAA or the banking industry with certain financial regulations, there's specific regulations about holding this information, credit card information, all this stuff can play a role. So there may be specific regulations applicable to your business, your life that I'm not able to articulate here, but conceptually you understand what I'm saying, that you want to give people whose interest or whose privacy rights may be at stake the opportunity to object. And the way to do that is to make sure they're aware that someone is trying to get their information via that subpoena. Now, there are instances, of course, where the government may say you're not allowed to tell the person being targeted by the subpoena because the court order says you can't tell. And if that's the case, well, then you can't tell. But that's unusual. It does happen. But yes, if the court order comes along with the subpoena that says whoever gets a subpoena is ordered not to tell the customer, well, then you can't tell the customer, presumably because that's a court order. And of course, that does occur. But generally speaking, it's just a subpoena. You all do have the opportunity to reach out and let people know about it. And then they can fight it out if they want. Or if they don't want to fight it out, they don't have to fight it out. It's up to them. But it's up to them because ultimately it's really their information. It's their interest at stake and not the middleman or the neutral company, which is what Liberty Safe really was. They should have been the neutral party here between the government on the one hand and the private citizen on the other hand. And they kind of took a side here with law enforcement by cooperating with them. And I think in hindsight, they probably should not have done that. And I'm guessing if they could do it all over again, they would not have done so. But I don't know. I don't speak for Liberty Safe. All right, folks. Hope you're doing a little bit something here today at the Four Boxes Diner. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We'll see you again here at Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.